Hello there and welcome to another Why You Lost. This one, some hardcore elf on elf action, the Wood Elves versus the High Elves. This sent to me by Joko, so thanks to him for the replay. We're on a big old open French map, some trees around, but mostly a flat map, so a good one for these two archer heavy factions. So this is Joko's army facing the High Elves in the distance, which is quite a ranged heavy army. We'll look at that in a second. But Joko's army itself, we can see, is pretty infantry heavy. And that can be a problem to itself, but the first little issue we can notice is that some of these units aren't pulled quite as wide as they should be. Their rank and file is too deep. This is, what, 5 men, 6 men deep? Whereas this one back here is more how you want them. Only 2 or 3 men deep. This is usually just better for 2 reasons. A, it'll make your entire army wider if you pull everything wide. The individual units will simply fill more space. You can see you could pull all of these this wide, and that would just make the entire army wider, which is better and makes you less likely to be flanked. The other issue is all the missiles that might come in. They generally have an easier time hitting targets when units are bunched up like this. Artillery especially. That can be pretty dangerous. If artillery lands in the middle of that, it's going to hit more than if they were all spread out. So always try to pull all of your units as wide as possible most of the time. Now for the units themselves, he's got 2 Eternal Guard up front. The Winter Heart Boys in the middle. They are unbreakable, of course. 2 units of Blade Singers, some nice anti-infantry, DRYCHA the Lord, 2 Way Stalkers, and some Way Watchers. Got those around the right way today. A couple of Glade Guard as well, just the normal ones. 1 unit of Dryads, slightly randomly 1 unit of Dryads, and then also some Eternal Guard at the back, with his only non-infantry being 2 units of Skirmish Cav out wide. So overall, very infantry heavy, likely to struggle without much mobility, but another little mistake is happening here. These Blade Singers are getting too far ahead because they were placed too far forward in the army. These expensive units, especially ones without any armor, are going to be an absolute magnet for all the missile fire. And they're going to outrun everybody else as well because they're way quicker. So they should probably be somewhere back here by now, which means they have farther to run than everybody else. But if timing serves well, when they reach the front line, this Eternal Guard front line should get there as well because they're obviously much slower. So you need everything to arrive together. Expensive units getting ahead will get shot. Now for the High Elf army, Spearmen up front, a bunch of units of those. Some Lothan Sea Guard mixed in on the edges and in the middle. Some missile power there. 2 Bolt Throwers, a couple of normal archers, a little bit of cavalry there. Silver Helms with shields, 2 more out here. So pretty standard High Elf army. Speary front, lots of missiles, bit of cavalry. Silver Helm's coming in for a charge here on the Dryads. So these Dryads probably shouldn't have really been here. This is why the spears go right on the edge, so that if that does come in, you've got the spears there to answer, and that would deter them. The Dryads probably should have been Vanguard deployed somewhere because they are only 1 individual unit. Could have done a cheeky little flank on all these missiles. Skirmish Cav pestering from the flank, but should probably be right round the back, so it can at least shoot some things in the back without their shields. But you can see the Blade Singers have taken an absolute hammering. This unit down to half its health. This other one only a quarter lost, but still, they could have been probably in full health if you just had them a bit farther back and had other stuff taking the missiles. Teclis the Lord here as well for the High Elves. Charge coming in. This guy doing a good job of trying to charge down some of the stronger infantry. He is going to run into some Eternal Guard there, though. But front lines are kind of engaging, but he's been a bit clumped up by that cav that's in the middle. But the trouble with these infantry-heavy armies, the biggest problem for them is that they will struggle to hold on to things like cav. The cav will simply outmaneuver them, and all these missiles aren't able to be disrupted. This artillery's firing, Lothan Sea Guard, missiles, artillery, missiles, everything's just firing everywhere without a care in the world, because he has nothing to harass them with. No mobility. This is why we need lots of mobility in an army. Infantry-heavy, especially against the High Elves, usually isn't a great plan, unless you really want to try and overrun them with infantry numbers. But you've got a few Vanguard deployment spots in these corners. This can be a good choice against the High Elves because they have that back line of missiles, and he doesn't really have too much defending the back of his High Elf army, so it's there for the taking, really. If you had some cav, you could absolutely ruin all this right now. Some nice Wild Riders, even the Glade Riders with spears would be able to do some fair work. And we can see it happening to Joko himself, actually. The enemy is doing to him what he needs to be doing to them. He's getting charges on his missile units. That's going to take him out pretty quick. Silver Helms as well, they do hit pretty hard. His opponent, though, missing an opportunity to take out the Way Watchers. He should have gone for them instead. They're a much more valuable target than Glade Guard. Looks like he may do it here. There we go. He's figured out, shit, I need to get those Way Watchers. They're expensive. So now they're in trouble, and Joko has nothing back there to defend with. So he may well lose his missile units. You can see he's starting to get around the flank here, so he has gone for the flank with the Dryads and some Eternal Guard, but neither of these units are great for the flanking, right? We need something faster, something that could have done this 2 minutes ago. when all the missiles were laying into the Blade Singers. Getting around the flank, though, with a few units. DRYCHA beating the crap out of Teclis, actually. If she can get this kill, or at least chase him off, then that could be pretty huge for him. Let's see what spells he's got. The Penumbral Pendulum and Enfeebling Foe. Two good choices. Does have this Dryad spawn as well, which he did use on some Loth and Seaguard a little bit earlier, I think. Teclis has been broken and is running away, but now you can see the problem. Teclis needs to be chased off here, but DRYCHA can't do it because she's too slow. Guess what you need? Some mobility. The only thing that could do it for him is these Glade Riders that seem to have been charged into melee and now have been routed. Not sure how they ended up in melee, but they've still got a lot of ammo. So he's kind of squandered his Glade Riders, but he knew he did that. He did mention that when he sent me the replay. So he's wasted those, hasn't got any ammo really used from them, so they are going to go to waste for the most part. But things are kind of crazy in this battle now. It's a little bit messy, but he has done a fair job of beating some stuff up. The Blade Singer's still going, pretty beaten down, but they can still do some good work against these Spearmen. They won't fight back too well. They should mash them up pretty good. Nice Pendulum coming in here. Although maybe it didn't hit so much. Maybe it would have been better on a more clumped up unit like this one. These Loth and Seaguard here would have taken that nicely. So maybe missing a little magical opportunity. A unit over here getting out of place. So these Eternal Guard with shields, I don't know whether this was intentional. Maybe he just forgot about this unit. But this puts a unit really out of position. They're never going to catch these cavalry, so they should never chase them. Maybe this was an accident, but they're so far out of position now. The rest of his army is over here, and then just the one unit over here. We call this being out of position. That unit makes no sense over there. It's chased a unit it's never going to catch. It's now just really out of where it could be useful. It could be pushing these two missile units that are hammering away. So got to be careful not to let your units get too far away from the fight, basically. This could just be a micro error, but hey-ho. Missile unit still around, firing at the Loth and Seaguard. The other issue with firing at Loth and Seaguard is that they do have a silver shield, so a lot of your missiles are going to be wasted. Trying to get a good look at the shield. There we go. They're trying to show it to us. They put it away. It's on their back, but somehow it protects their front. It's one of those magical units. But despite some of Joko's blunders, he has put some fair damage on this High Elf army. We can see an Arrow of Kurnus coming in there on those Loth and Seaguard. And another one on Loth and Seaguard. Now, you could say this was a good target. They are a dangerous unit to take care of. So that's 2 Arrows of Kurnus from the Waystalkers. That seems like a good target, right? But 2 Waystalkers, what are they really there for? Character assassination. Guess who's still alive? Old Teclis has come back. He's healed himself up. Those 2 Arrows of Kurnus that he just used on Loth and Seaguard would have absolutely ruined Teclis. Not to mention the ammo that they still have left. They could easily take out Teclis right now, but he's not. He's focusing other targets, so he's missing a big opportunity there to finish off Teclis early. The Lord should be the #1 priority target to take down. If he's there for the taking, fucking take him. Especially if he's a light squishy boy like Teclis. And he's even running towards the Waystalkers now. There we go. He's finally noticed. And he is going to start to hammer away at Teclis. But if those 2 Arrows of Kurnus had hit him already, he's just literally standing right in front of the Waystalkers. He is asking for it. You can see he's doing quick damage. Taking Teclis' health down super quick. And if those 2 Arrow of Kurnus has been there to use on Teclis, oof. They should probably be saved. Unless there's a really good damage opportunity on a bunch of units, they're usually going to be best saved just pursuing that Lord the entire time. Because if you take Teclis off the field, it could be a game changer. So that's the most of it for this one. It's pretty crazy mess over here now. He does do pretty well, to be honest. It was looking like he was going to lose. The favor bar was going against him. But now he's brought it back to the middle. So Joko has done some fair work turning this one around. But I think if he just had a few units of cavalry, he would have absolutely destroyed this guy. Or if he managed to kill Teclis a little bit earlier or chased him off, then that would have been a GG by now as well. DRYCHA trying to chase stuff now, but she's obviously too slow on foot. She's going to get pinned down and taken out herself. So that's going to be a big loss of his Lord, and that's probably going to hurt him the most, because there still is a fairly even favor bar at this point. You can see he's got all the High Elf infantry running. He's got this dead to rights if he wants it. He's still got the Waystalkers in good health. They can fight in melee. He's trying to chase stuff off, but he still has Teclis to deal with. Teclis still alive, just. He's managed to survive, and that is what he's going to lose in the fight. So a very close one. A good effort from Joko. Just those few little mistakes that have added up, I think. But more importantly, he didn't have enough mobility. He could have done so much more if he just had a bit of cav to help him chase off those routed units, Teclis, to help pressure those missile and artillery units, to help stop the cavalry from running away. There's not a lot he could do about stopping that cavalry, so that probably did a lot of damage as well. So yeah, a lack of mobility, probably the main thing. Mistakes happen for both sides every battle. Even the best players in the world will still make some mistakes every battle because it's part of the game. So mistakes are fine. They are expected. DRYCHA doing some good work though, 2,600. Nice work with those spells, I imagine. The Waystalkers, lots of nice damage from them as well. Good work with them. Not quite getting the job done of taking out Teclis, though. Eternal Guard is Eternal Guard. Not a lot from the infantry, but that's infantry. Not bad from the Winterheart boys. Not much from the Blade Singers, see? They got 2 beaten up before they could really do too much. A little bit of work from one of them, but they could have done so much. They could have teared through a bunch of those Lothern Sea Guard pretty easily if they'd been in full health when they reached them. A couple of Glade Guard didn't really get a lot done. The Waywatchers. The Waywatchers did okay, actually. Despite being a bit harassed, they got some work done. And the Cav couldn't get a lot done either. So a few strong parts of his army doing well, but a few big parts also not getting too much done. Teclis didn't get too much damage done, but I think he probably did a bunch of healing. Infantry is infantry. Missiles doing okay. Lothern Sea Guard. You can see the missiles overall doing pretty good. Oh, here we go. The Cav, 1700. Ooh. So a lot of work from the Cav that he couldn't stop. A fair bit of work from all his missiles overall, but nothing too standing out. But mostly the cavalry being a problem. That mobility, like I said, he couldn't hold on to it, and he got shot up a lot. Dratos. But let's take a look at his build and see what we could do to improve it. So this is Joko's army. Let's take a look at what we got and what we could change. DRYCHA coming out the field. A good lord choice, I think. She's got the power recharge. Doesn't have smoke and mirrors. That's fine. That's not that useful. Does have the summon, though. This is essential to bring for DRYCHA. Always bring that good old summon. Spells. Shadow Lawbook, of course. Got the Pendulum. Got Enfeebling Foe. Good choices. Nothing wrong with that. I maybe might like the Withering instead. If there was a dragon or a phoenix, you can take away some of their armor. Make them a little bit easier to deal with. But I guess reducing the melee defense of Enfeebling Foe kind of does a similar thing, so that's all good. Pit of Shades, of course, another good option, but Pendulum's probably better, given that High Elves don't tend to blob up too much. But yeah, I think DRYCHA is probably one of the better Lord choices here. You could bring the Sisters, but they might be a risk in the sky. If there's a dragon or some Arcane Phoenixes, they might be outmatched and be in trouble. Durthu is a big target, so he might get shot up by missiles, so he's probably not a good idea. So probably DRYCHA or Orion are going to be the best choices for this kind of matchup, I would think. So yeah, Lord seems perfectly fine, not really anything to change there. 2 Waystalkers as well, good for those character assassinations, can be especially useful as well against the High Elves, taking down those dragons and Arcane Phoenixes and things, so a good choice. Just got the Arrow of Kurnus, that's all they need, don't make them too expensive. So yeah, as Lord and Hero choices, absolutely fine I think, nothing really to change there. Dryads. This one unit of Dryads a little bit random, not sure it was necessarily needed. Maybe that was his flanking choice, but if that was going to be your flanking choice, then you should probably just bring some Glade Riders with spears instead, because I think they cost the same as well. So we're going to get rid of those, don't really need the Dryads. We've got a 4-unit front line, but because we're probably going to be facing High Elf Spearmen, we don't really want to just have a Spearman off and just have a stalemate. So we're going to make a small front line. We want more damage dealers, things that can really get through that front line instead. Which is why those Blade Singers are a great choice. They're armor piercing, they'll mess everybody up. They've got magical attacks as well, which can make them a little bit more versatile. But their lack of armor, of course, does make them very susceptible to being blasted by missiles. So they do have to be wary of that. For the missile section, okay, so we're going to get rid of the 2 Glade Guard. Because we don't really want to have too much in the way of missiles against the High Elves. At least if you're going with the plan that I'm going to go with in my head. Now, Waywatchers also may not be the best choice, because Waywatchers are great at skirmishing, but in this kind of army, he's not really skirmishing with them. So you might be better off just taking 2 units of Starfire Shafts, because they're armor piercing, and they're just going to stay up front with your army that is advancing, right? You're not playing the skirmish game, so half of the Waywatchers' power of skirmishing and stalk kind of goes out the window. But the biggest issue for the Wood Elves when facing the High Elves is, in fact, that High Elves probably have the better missile units. And I know, blasphemy, but it's only for one real reason, and because of one single unit, the Lothern Sea Guard. They have a silver shield, and they have normal missiles. They don't have armor piercing, but they don't need it, because the Wood Elves don't have any armor. That silver shield will allow them to outgun even Waywatchers, who maybe they won't outright beat, but they will waste a lot of that Waywatcher ammo with their 55% block chance. So generally, it's not a great idea to try and outshoot the High Elves. It might work sometimes, but if anyone's got any clue, they'll probably just bring a bunch of Lothern Sea Guard and give all your missile units a hard time. So instead of going too heavy on the missiles, we will bring a couple though. We'll keep those 2 Starfire Shafts, but what we need now is mobility. All of this stuff. Anything fast that can get around quickly. Could maybe get some Zotes on the field. Those could deal with some of the Cav. The Silver Helms, the Dragon Princes. They could even get after dragons or lords on mounts. So Zotes are a good choice. They've got that healing as well, so they can help keep other parts of the army in the fight. Magical attacks as well, so in case of those Phoenixes. But then we've got the cavalry section where we've got a bunch of choices. Wild Riders, Glade Riders with spears, all the Great Stags. I'd say the Great Stags probably aren't that necessary as they're armor piercing, and Wood Elves don't have a lot of armor. So Wild Riders with shields because of all the missiles. probably a better choice. So 2 units of those makes us a little over. We could lose a missile unit. So that doesn't look too bad. Maybe a little light in the missiles. If you had dragons and things, they could be a little bit hard to shoot down. But we do have the Waystalkers to make up for the loss of missile infantry firepower. So yeah, I think these 2 units of Wild Riders could get a lot done. They could get behind. They are shielded, so they can be protected from all the missiles. They can get up after the Lothern Sea Guard, the archers, the artillery, and try to run them down. The Zotes can do the same thing as well if there's not some cavalry for them to take out. How well could Zotes have kept those Silver Helms at bay for Joko there? They would have done a great job keeping all those things away from all those missiles and allowed them to get a fair bit of work done. But we could go with an army like that. Or what else could we do? We could mix around the front line, go a little bit more aggressive on the front line, a little bit more damage dealery. Dryads could be a choice. They cost the same. They've got a little bit more damage output. They are a little bit susceptible to being shot up though, so there is that risk. But if you move fast, or you could Vanguard deploy them in a sneaky way, you could maybe bring War Dancers, actually. You could maybe drop out the Blade Singers, because we don't need the armor piercing so much of the Blade Singers, because High Elves aren't massively armored unless it's the most expensive units. Then Blade Singers, you could bring more of them. They'd be able to run through Spearmen and Lothern Sea Guard much easier. Although one unit we could really use in this fight well is the Glade Riders with Spears. They're probably a bit underrated in this fight, actually. You could bring a bunch of those. They could harass those High Elf missiles. They're all light in armor. They're not very tough. You could get after those pretty well. Lothern Sea Guard might be a little bit more of a problem, but a bunch of those could be good. Maybe you could go with that as a way more aggressive army, surrounding the enemy, getting all that cav behind them, harassing those missiles. But we could go still a little bit more defensive, a little more holding on the front line if you wanted to. Flank around with the War Dancers and the Glade Riders. You've got the Zotes and Wild Riders there to deal with some of the enemy cav, so that could be a strong way to go, perhaps. Although, while I said not to go too missile heavy, I don't think Joko went too missile heavy in that one. He only had 3 missile units, and that's a fine amount, I think. So you could go a little bit more on the missiles if you wanted to. I'd maybe like the numbers, just because we could potentially be outgunned. Even Way Watchers might be outgunned by Lothern Sea Guard. So if you bring more numbers, it'll give you a little more chance. So we could do 2 units of Starfire Shafts and 1 unit of Poison Hagbane Boys. Maybe something like that with a little bit more ranged. But there's a few options anyway for Wood Elves versus High Elves. Just make sure you bring enough mobility to harass all those missiles and artillery and to chase off goddamn Techless. And also don't go too missile heavy and you should be fine. So there we go. Wood Elves versus High Elves. Why Joko lost. Hopefully he found this helpful and maybe you did as well. If you want to send me one of these replays to potentially be a Why You Lost, you can send it to me in the Discord. Just DM it to me. Link to the Discord in the description. Do only send me replays that you lose though. I don't want to use replays of you winning and somebody else losing, because I don't like to do this unless the person that's losing is okay with it being shown. And I can't guarantee that unless it's being sent to me by the loser. So do keep that in mind. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the future.